Wow. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Wow. I don't, it's a miracle that I even made it on at this moment, right? Everything was running so smoothly this morning. I had all of the things lined up, which admittedly, I will forget something at some point. So I know that it's not all, conspiring against me, but it all like went sideways the minute I tried to stream. And now it's like buffering the whole thing. And so, what was the comment? Somebody had said, Alex K had said, "You must be right over the target." And I said, "I haven't even said anything yet." And he was like, "The looking glass knows what you're gonna say." And then he said, "Deploy the porn bots." Well, I mean, that seems to be just expected at this point. So I clear them out as soon as possible when they come up on, I get the notifications for comments and stuff. So anyway, welcome to Catalyst Energies. Today is Friday. This is when we get together and I broadcast the astrology report for the upcoming week. We do have a new moon in Leo on the 28th, which will be Thursday, I believe. Yes, Thursday. And so we're going to talk about that. We are officially in Leo season as of the end of today, right? The sun comes into Leo today. And gosh, it feels like I've just, a whole lifetime. Again, every week it feels like there's like this whole lifetime of change that happens. So I hope everyone's doing well, taking good care of themselves. It's like the eye of the needle and the lion's gate is truly on its way. And we can really, many of us are really, really feeling the potency of it. And you can even see some sort of consolidation of everybody's resources and power right now and getting ready for kind of like this climax moment. And when the sun comes into Leo, I mean, that is the home territory of the sun in astrology. It's very powerful at this time of year, even if you're in the southern hemisphere. And more of the opposition to Leo, which is Aquarius. You got Saturn on your side right now down in the southern hemisphere because in the north here, the sun in Leo is really like the peak of the summertime in terms of when the flowers start blooming, right? This is where that vital energy becomes so much more enhanced, right? Because there is a containment system in some ways through all that Cancer energy that is able to hold and nourish and protect and allow for the growth and really the release of this very combust and vital energy that we identify with the sun in our everyday material experience. So we're gonna talk about this new moon. We're gonna talk about all the astrology leading up to this point. We'll take a look at the reading from Monday and maybe just check back in with how things maybe were presented to us through that medium of the tarot and the card reading. And really, it's just at this point, it seems like it's not even really necessary as much to use the cards as much as to maybe fine-tune what many of us, most of us at this point, are already feeling intuitively and learning that intuitive language for ourselves, what it feels like, how we, the unique language of our own soul, right, and how it speaks to us through synchronicities in our dreams. Boy, we're going to talk about the space weather, of course, because the Schumann has been very loud the last couple of days, pretty consistently very loud, and we are getting bombarded with solar weather, right? There's solar wind. We are having geomagnetic storms right now. I know that the last couple of nights, every time there seems to be the geomagnetic unrest, and then also along with that the amplification of the Schumann, it's been rough going with sleep, right? A lot of waking up, a lot of very on the surface agitation and feelings in the dream state. I think a lot of us are working through, especially that third quarter moon that we just had on Wednesday, right? I mean, it's really facing the music, and it's been some very painful, very sharp, and almost a cold truce in a lot of ways. We, not fully, in some ways, accepting where we've been deceived, where we've been the deceiver, where we've been the liar, when we've been lied to, when we're lying to ourselves, all of these things. And there's really only two air signs represented right now in the zodiac, and that's Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, and Pallas Athena, who is in conjunction with Aldebaran right now. So other than that, it's, there's not a lot of the mind and the air element represented right now, other than with these representations of responsibility, of task, completion, of getting things done. That is Saturn, right? The Lord of Time and the Goddess of Wisdom and Strategy, which in herself has a very strong, connection to the mind, to wisdom, to the use of knowledge and its application. So Pallas does seem to be that Venus in the air signs energy in general, right? The divine feminine, but in a more focused on those mental and cognitive ways of interacting with the world, and it can be a cold hard truth, and there's still a sensitivity here that we have to contend with. And so we started this week about confronting our obstacles, right? And third quarter moon, the rest of this week, right? This waning moon period going into the balsamic phase, right? The very end before the turnover into the new moon, where we set intentions for a new period of growth and learning and evolution within ourselves, really coming to balance the light and the dark within ourselves, the sun and the moon, right? They come together and they activate each other for a potential growth, a potential learning, right? And gosh, it just feels really big. So And what's interesting is, like, it's almost like contractions. That's almost what it feels like at this point with the Schumann. And I full transparency, I'm really questioning what it is we're looking at, rather than just accepting what we're being told about it, and really attempting to have track my own experiences in relation to the data, to be like, well, what is this really? And I don't know. And I think that there's a lot that we are being misled about it, but it did feel like contractions, like, making the space, almost forcing the space. And anybody that has birthed a person, then what this experience is really all about. And there's a lot going on with that. And when we come into Leo, it truly is kind of like that birthing, the moment has been pierced through, right? The birth has happened. We go through this very narrow canal, though, right? The eye of the needle, so to speak, in order to be born into a new phase, into the world, into our materiality. So there's a lot of that type of imagery that came out really strong this morning, at least for me. And then also a pretty distinct continuation of a theme of just like cold, hard truth that is very difficult to accept. And in this period of Wednesday to Wednesday, basically this last quarter of the lunar cycle that started with a new moon in Cancer, conjunct Black Moon Lilith. We just spent a whole month talking about Lilith from every angle, to the astronomy, the mythology, the archetypes, the astrology, the Starseed connections, and we had a great comp for replay if you weren't able to join us. And it crossed a lot of themes, but definitely, we all feel the potency of the Lion's Gate. And what is that? That is the moment where Sirius, the star, is rising in the dawn sky just before the sun, so you can actually see it before the sun comes up. And that technically is on the 5th of August in terms of the astrology or the astronomy, right? We won't be really able to see it until about the 8th, unless you live in a very flat sea level place, and to the east there is no obstruction, right? Possibly this place that we're looking at right now. Imagine if you were turned and facing because this looks like it's facing the west at sunset, but it could be facing the east, right? This is bioluminescence, by the way. I thought that was pretty cool. But unless you're in this really flat place, right, you may not be able to see or interested in that. And the 8-8 from a geometrical, from a tropical astrology, is the halfway point of the sun through the sign of Leo. So both of those times are really very relevant. And we're going to actually be talking about them on a special event on the 31st for the Lionsgate. So keep an eye out for promotional material. Either get on my email list in the description box below. You can do that. Or just go to the website. I'll eventually have it posted there, and certainly on social media, and I will bring it up on Monday on the Starseed Ministry. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick before we launch in and see how it's going, how people are feeling, listening while literally hiking a mountain. Of course you are. Of course you're literally hiking a mountain. And the fact that you're able to stream right now is pretty impressive too. That's really cool. So I hope that I want to be giving you quality content that's worth tuning in at the moment that you are scaling a mountain. That's pretty cool. So let's look at the space weather, right? Let's start with something that is like physically tangible, at least at this, at this juncture, and see what's going on, because it does feel, these contractions seem pretty they seem pretty strong right now, and there's no shortage of information out there about the Schumann resonance. So today's the 22nd, Friday the 22nd, so Wednesday, right, the third quarter moon, moving into Thursday, they kind of look like teeth, don't they? Moving into right now, it remains to be seen if there's going to be any more of these blasts, but again, I really encourage you to go to where the data is actually being recorded and presented, which is a link that I'll put in the description box, actually. It's to Tomsk University, and really start tracking your own experiences based on what you see. So I know for me, if it happens overnight, it's, very agitated sleep, lots of really strange and powerful dreams that are usually much more of a disturbance than a, mystical, magical mystery tour type of experience. Waking up a lot of imbalance with internal thermostat, right? And there's other reasons that will feed into that in terms of the time of year and the time of the month as well, right? Your internal temperature changes when your hormonal cycle is going through its own monthly cycle, regardless of what your biological sex is. We all have something. It's just more pronounced for the female body and the female reproductive system, because it's so much more in tune to the lunar cycle. But we all have them. So, and where the moon is, what it's illuminated, its illumination, where it's at in relation to other things, these are all going to have an energetic impact on us. But I do notice that and other people have reported it too, that these large blasts, if they happen overnight, seem to be really disruptive of the sleep state. And so it makes me wonder, again, what are we being woken up to? Like, what is blasting us? And is this even organic? I really question, considering we are talking about, electricity, we're talking about magnetism, we're talking about light and photons, and there are artificial means in which to impact all of these things that come through HARP, for instance. So these are just questions. I'm not saying I know, because I don't, but I do ask these questions, and I think that's really important to consider and to really discern for yourself based on what you're experiencing. So some people get the ringing in the ears, some people get really bad headaches. It's also important to look at the solar weather while this is happening, because these things are not separate from each other, but I do feel like that there are times where they don't seem to correlate at all. Now is one of those times where it seems like, oh, okay, the planet seems to be boosting itself in some way magnetically for this onslaught of solar wind. We're going to get a CME here over the weekend, and you can already see the KP index is climbing up to 5, which is not, it goes all the way up to 9. So this is really just now reaching that point where it starts to be very dense. There's a lot of pressure in the magnetosphere, and that causes all kinds of stuff to happen. There's psychological issues, there's psychiatric issues, there are cardiovascular issues. Anything related to your own magnetic field and your own magnetism is going to probably be disturbed as well. And we know that the magnetic field is weakening by the day, and so there is more excitement within that when we get hit with plasma, which is just a very highly charged, very energized state of matter, and then of course cosmic rays and light, right? Photons themselves reach us as well, but they don't have a mass. Plasma does. I think that's important to keep in mind when we talk about this solar wind and activations and DNA activations and what are cosmic rays, what is plasma? Well, it's matter moving near the speed of light with incredible amount of energy and heat attached to it. So it's different than photons. Light does not have a mass. Photons don't have a mass. So and that's not what we're all necessarily getting with this solar wind. So there are actual charged particles that come into our atmosphere and have this impact, right? And if you know all this, I'm so sorry. It's just, it's important to reestablish these fundamentals for people so they understand, because a lot of people don't. And I'm still learning as well. So we also see, this is the Enlil spiral. NASA calls it the Enlil spiral. This is just showing, there's the CME from yesterday. There was a huge eruption, the solar tsunami. It wasn't that intense, but it was a full spectrum. Look at this. So they're identifying that this is going to be, reaching us roughly around tomorrow, maybe into Sunday. We're already getting the solar wind. So there is this onslaught coming that's already here. What it manages to to what extent it has an impact on us, maybe that's what the Schumann is, getting louder for. It's possible, right? Again, contractions are the, the muscular, means of opening the birth canal, right? And so perhaps through these amplifications, that's part of what's happening. Again, I'm just asking questions. I don't know. And, if I could spend all of my time researching all the time, I guess I would be an academic, but there's a reason that I consistently pulled away every single time I tried to go into that space, because, it's compromised, and we know that. So here's our sun and these two big, huge coronal hole complex. This solar wind is what's reaching us now from these coronal holes. So it's about to turn out of view, but not without having an impact on us as well. So here's today's chart. We'll get into that for sure. I just want to show you real quick. I've been really enjoying going back to these readings and being like, whoa, I didn't realize how relevant this was going to be, right? At the time, you just see like, okay, this is what we're working with right now. So, we had the devil reversed, right? The Pluto in Capricorn in its retrograde as our causal factor. The Prince of Cups, right? That is, we haven't, at that point, it was like, do I go into the depth of who I am? Do I really, consciously dive into the sensitivity and the depth and, a sense of almost poetic understanding of ourselves, or do we just kind of sit here and not do anything? And I think that there was a lot of that, of just like, oh gosh, right? And the Two of Keys, right? The initiation in Count Saint Germain in its reversal, right? That, again, that there is a collective kind of just like, oh, I'm not ready for this initiation yet, but it's, and also too, your energy getting split into all different directions. The dog is about, where's your loyalty, faithfulness? These are huge Cancerian themes here that we have been working with all month and will continue to do so, because Venus is going to be moving through Cancer for, a number of weeks as well. So everything is on track, but I think that it sometimes it's so painful and it's so disappointing. Like the incredible depth of disappointment that I felt, not even for my own sense or my own personal life. There's nothing necessarily that I'm connecting it to directly in my life, but boy, was I feeling it after that third quarter moon, because that's what we're rearranging within ourselves now. We've gotten a sense of, okay, this has worked, this hasn't worked when it comes to our inner power and how it's released. That's a big part of Capricorn. And when the means of that release is either destructive, or it isolates us, or it is something that we don't want, I mean, we still have to kind of come to terms with it, even if it's not, we haven't fully accepted the truce. It's more like a cold truce, or like a really just resisted kind of coming to a mental respite in some ways. So I just wanted to show that, because I feel like a lot of this week has been really bringing all of this out within all of us. And now we're finishing this lunar cycle. And this had a lot to do with, in some ways imitating who and what and how, in some ways, we want to, grow into this best version of ourselves, right? The Cancerian theme is about the character that develops as a result of our feeling of protection and being wanted, right? I mean, that's also a Cancerian thing, that there's a family, there is a sense of pack or community that holds everyone together, but it's very much about the individual consciousness coming to know itself in its sensitivity and power based on that. So these are all themes we've all been dealing with, and now we're about to pierce through the eye of the needle and come through in our full sovereign nature with this Leo season, and especially when we get to the new moon. So let's start looking at the chart here and kind of breaking this down. And I do actually here, one second guys, just to put it out there while I'm thinking about it. So because we're having a Leo new moon this month, the lunar transit forecast sale is now open for Leo and Aquarius sun, moon, and rising folks. So you just go to catalystenergies.net. You can book it right from the homepage. That's all linked in the description box below. So 30 minutes is 33 USD. I know the US dollar is just tanking in its value. I am doing the best that I can to really make this, to I give a lot in these readings, and part of that is because I've created the space in order to hold that and for it to come through. So, but I do have to honor my own time and my own resources. So I'm trying. I really am. So for those of you who are not using U.S. currency to begin with, I know it's probably so disparate at this point. So I'm doing my best to make it accessible to people. But yeah, Leo, Aquarius, sun, moon, rising this month is the lunar transit forecast. So we're going to look at the Leo new moon. There will be actually a general reading for Leos that are that's gonna be posted next week for this new moon. So, but this is open now for booking. So, and it's good to get it in sometimes before the new moon even happens. But sometimes you can still get a lot of perspective once you get halfway through the lunar cycle, and that's going to be a full moon in Aquarius. So, boy, August is something else, and we'll get into that. We got to get through this week first. We still have to reorient ourselves internally based on, the defeat. Or a sense of defeat. Are we wearing the defeat like a badge, or are we actually learning something from this situation? Have we really felt a sense of true responsibility for our actions and how they do ripple out and have an impact on the world around us no matter what? Because there's two sides to this, right? There's so much power in that perspective, and it goes, it could be for the selfish gain, right? These are all the dark sides of Leo, right? The conceitedness, the ego, that is fronting as like some sort of more devotional focus. Narcissism, like real true narcissism, comes out of a dysfunctional fourth house into the fifth house. It's very difficult to actually treat real narcissists, especially from a allopathic psychology perspective, right? It's a personality disorder. And anybody that's actually been engaged with knows personally, like true narcissists, it really, you think that like just appeal, and this is what we're dealing with. You think that appeasing and appealing to their common sense, their humanity, their own empathy, that does not work. This is a shell that has projected out, it's a hologram of something that's not real in order to protect something that is very fragile and does not have a strong identity in those Cancerian themes. Anyway, so that's the dark side of Leo. But the lesson I think that we're really meant to learn during this lunar cycle, and I assure you August is going to be like back to back to back opportunity. And even this week, as we're going to see, I was really feeling this. I was just like, man, this is just like nonstop, like big transits, like nonstop. It just seems like one after the other after the other. And is it just me? And then in our conversation yesterday for the Catalyst Classroom, somebody brought up and they're like, that's other astrologers, other people who are in, doing this type of work. It's pretty consistent across the board, especially astrology. It's like, this is the most in terms of a small period of time. And that increases, that is a dense amount of astrological input in a very small amount of time. And so when you have a lot of energy in a small volume, right, that means density, that means increased pressure, that means more energy is available, but it also means you have to be able to integrate it somehow. And I think that's been some of the, that's obviously a big part of all of our challenge, and to not get so caught up in the end game and the end goal, but to realize it's all about the experience. So, that's what we're here for as souls, especially starseeds, right? I mean, when you get hyper-focused on some sort of end goal, you've kind of gotten caught back in the Orion loop of this or that, instead of the real magic is in the experience. And that's what Sirius, that's what the archetype of Cancer, the divine feminine, and the divine, the sacred goddess in general is about the feeling that comes. And any superhero movie you want to watch, right? Just watch all of the Marvel movies, right? When does the protagonist or protagonists, when is it that they, at the moment that all seems to be lost, what happens when they erupt in this huge amount of power? They're emotionally triggered to the point where they just, blah, right? That's where the magic is. It's in the feels, right? And so, but the Leo energy is the resonance that comes from that, the output, the voice. And that is so powerful. We can change literally the reality around all of us based on each person being in resonance with their own spirit and then projecting that out into their creative expression, their resonance, their voice, right? The fifth house is your joy. And the sun in Leo those are the ruling essences of the fifth house. So we're getting ready to like come through here, right? And to put ourselves out there. And boy, there's going to be a lot of squares to all this Taurus energy. So yeah, let's just get into it and see what we have here. So here's today. It's the 22nd. Our moon is actually in Taurus. Oh, would you look at that? So it's already, as of this morning, the moon has already passed over her own north node. She is already passed over Uranus. Certainly is already conjunct with Mars and is coming into position with the Pleiades, right, as of now. So this is always a beautiful time. I'm a big fan of the moon in the Pleiades. Mostly I'm biased because that's the Pleiades is my nadir, my fourth house cusp. And so I really identify with it, the moon in the fourth house, and then to be in the Pleiades. It's a nice moment here. This is a nice window, a really nurturing window to open because it's the moon, right? And the moon is exalted in Taurus. It will cross over, points of the last two eclipses, and that's something to keep in mind too, that there's a connection to those moments, right? And this time not eclipsed, which is also pretty nice. But there is also squares to, the square to Saturn, right, in Aquarius. And eventually there are going to be, there'll eventually be all the squares to all of this Leo. So, but we'll get there. Now let me see here. Mercury's in Leo. All fully in Leo now. So the cognitive and mental, the communicative expression, the ability to use our mind and the realm of ideas is, being activated by this solar energy. It's like Mercury or Hermes, right? Why is he so fast? Because he's traveling on a beam of light. Well, for us, at least, the most prominent source of light right now, at least for us, is our sun. So there's a strong connection with Mercury in Leo, and they're kind of like they're like half brothers, right? They both have a father in Jupiter or Zeus when you're talking about like Greek and Roman mythology. So Apollo and Mercury. And actually, now that I'm talking about the two of them together, part of that story is that Mercury was, just a gifted everything. One of his, or his parent, his mother is one of the seven sisters of the Pleiades. So Mercury is incredibly talented with everything that he does. And one of the things that Apollo really wanted was the ability to create music. Oh, look, resonance. That's interesting. And they made a trade, and I'm sorry, I can't remember all the specifics. It's just about how Apollo really wanted the mastery of music from Mercury. And there's a story around that you can always just look into if you're interested, but there's a connection there as well. So now for Mercury to be in Leo, it's like, hey, here, let me show you how to do this, right? Like, how do we actually engage with vibration through our own bodies, and sound is one of the primary ways. It's not the only way, light and color, but sound is something really really special to the human experience. And anybody that, we all love music, and if you're a musician, then you know exactly how it impacts you when you play it or you sing or anything like that. So Mercury in Leo now during this time, especially now that the sun is about to come into Leo, is all about teaching us to sing, basically, right? And take that as a symbolic thing, not as a literal thing. But at this point, it's like when we voice ourselves in our full joy and our full expression of being a vessel for divine energy to move through, then we can literally reshape the reality that we are all participating in. But that does require, again, that third quarter moon with such a powerful sense of like disappointment is I think a collective kind of at some level, maybe subconscious at this point. Certainly it's not fully it's fully felt but not fully seen that there are boundaries, that eventually the seed must be embedded in the medium of growth, and that has an impact. That creates its own frequency, that reverberates out. And and that's part of being free and having freedom and liberty truly is to be responsible for our participation in the balance of the universe, which is Libra, and that's its opposite. So Moon in Taurus, like I said, it was conjunct Uranus, conjunct the North Node, right? I mean, again, just kind of, I wouldn't say stabilizing by any stretch in terms of the moon conjunct Uranus, but they're, a deeper kind of internal awakening, a stirring that's starting in our subconscious, that is meant to break away from the old and come into our future with Uranus. And then, of course, conjunct the North Node, which is the soul's destiny. It's about, what's important to me, right? Like opening the book and being like, okay, that resonates, that doesn't resonate at all or make sense. Okay, well, I'm not going to just take this at face value. I'm going to have the experience in a natural and harmonic way with these concepts, right? So this is where we're all being pulled in order to evolve. And the moon was like, hey, by the way, oh, okay, I feel that within me, right? I feel that now. And maybe having the Uranian just like, well, let me just like turn this sideways here is enough of a change in perspective for something new to even come out of what we have been told over and over and over again. There's nothing wrong with tradition, but the reality of where we're at right now with Pluto in Capricorn is just like, all of the structures that have been built from that are going through their demolition and metamorphosis. So we have to get down to what is actually valuable to us. So the moon crossing the North Node, I think this morning was great. Square to Saturn. Again, I think that we want real a feel of real command and authority over our own self, our own emotional self in relation to the world around us. And the square to Saturn is just like, well, to what end? Right? To what end? Like, what's it all for? What's the responsibility? What's the bigger picture? And what are the institutions that make up the collective consciousness now, right? And I think that there's a sense of wanting, again, to kind of almost act out in a way of like protection, and more than that, to command our inner resources, our emotional resources, where Saturn's retrograde is making it in that square is like, yeah, but why? What is it here that you are, beholden to as being part of this reality? And how are you going to share your experiences in order to assist other people who are not at the same place in terms of, getting your passions under control, right? The moon in Taurus is just like, I'm using that energy and I'm going to get some scalps, right? And I know that that's a really violent image, but that's what it is, right? And it's about being in total authority over yourself. And Saturn retrograde, like I said, there's only these two elements of air being represented until the moon comes into Gemini over the weekend. So, which is coming, but Saturn is just like, okay, well, this is the collective voice, and how are you participating within it, and what is your role within it? And there's no getting out of that experience either, which is why Saturn retrograde is just so ruthless right now. The good news is right after that, the moon comes into this sextile with Neptune, as you can see here, right? A 60-degree angle, and again, we're coming into conjunction with the Pleiades. This is also in conjunction to Algol, the head of Medusa, right? This adjustment to the natural flow, or the process of life, right? It is, you can't ever, it's written into the code, right? It's not about fearing death or thinking it's the end. It's realizing that it's more of a consistent oscillation, a wave pattern that represents birth, life, and death, regeneration, right? This is a cycle. And so when you find yourself in alignment and holistically connected to it, you're able to very much adjust to the overall experience. A lot of resistance. And thankfully, Neptune, even in its retrograde, in a sextile to the moon, is going to be like, death is not the end. Right? In fact, it's really allows us to come back into communion with Source or Divinity or the universe, and then come into the next iteration of our soul's journey, which is truly infinite, right? So at least in this time matrix, I'm not sure. I don't know. I just know that Neptune in Pisces right now, even like I said, in its retrograde, is deepening our intuition here to allow us to make this adjustment within ourselves. And again, the Saturn and Moon square today is also going to establish it in an uncomfortable way. It's just like, this is not just about us in our individual right? Like, what does that apply to? What is the overall collective voice about this? And Saturn is like, this is what it means to be going into the age of Aquarius. So got to find a way to make it work. And Neptune, I think Neptune and the moon, in that sextile, right? That right after it, I think is going to be really helpful in terms of being able to see our own journey and realize that we follow a new pathway once we kind of come back and have this really powerful kind of purification at a soul level. I mean, the end of Pisces really is like the end of, and preparing to come back into the next iteration. It's always a rough time of year. Aquarius and Pisces, at least in the northern hemisphere, are the ends of they are the depth of the winter. And so it really does challenge us to stay identified and kind of focused on the collective experience and the inspiration to start again, right? Which comes with the spring. Okay. So tomorrow is the 23rd, Saturday. This is our beginning of our Leo season, right? Transmutation of life into mind. This is truly where the Kundalini goes. Whoop! Right? It gets an eruption of biopsychic energy into the ego-controlled field of consciousness. There you get the ego part of the fifth house and Leo, because it's still the individual, but now it's transmuted from that spark of life that Aries represents through Taurus, Gemini, Cancer into a creative expression, like an actual voice with almost with an identity, not attached to it, but through the vessel of one's identity in a lot of ways, and certainly one's sovereignty and their own individuality. So things are gonna start really picking up at this point. Mercury, like I said, in Leo, Venus in Cancer, Mars is crossing over the point of the last solar eclipse, right? Roughly 10-11 degrees of Taurus. So there's also some sort of like almost drive here, which is hard with Taurus, but this is where we're really going to gather our courage here to start mobilizing ourselves and to identify what it takes to really face the storm. And what's going to be really interesting this week is when Mars and Uranus come into a square with each other, and that's going to Mercury and Mars, my bad. Mercury and Mars will be in a square to each other, and while there is this sense of communicative and very mental kind of pageantry, like, hey, look what I did, Mars is going to be like, okay, but I am, the energy behind the output and the action is to face the storm, essentially, like the character to really develop under adverse conditions. And Mercury is going to be kind of tooting its own horn here and be like, hey, look what I've done, and I'm going to show everybody. It's like a parade float, going down the street, and everybody's just like, yay. So I get the sense here with that, and I'll show you where it is in the chart in the week coming up, that the square, right, the conflict in these energies, these fixed energies, is going to be like, kind of keep yourself like eyes on the prize, you know what I mean? And in terms of your action, and the mind can certainly we can feel kind of that sense of accomplishment in terms of what we have come to realize, what we know, the ability to express ourselves with Mercury and Leo. I think that that's an important thing, but there's that square there is going to really bring out the conflict about where our energies really need to be, focused on. And I would say with Mars and Taurus, I mean, this is where the real power is going to come from. Like the bull, when it's ready to like bust through that, fourth wall or whatever. Mercury and Leo is just kind of like, hey, look what I did, right? And that's okay too. We don't want to get so caught up in just like, I gotta like get through the storm, that we don't. Let's move to tomorrow so that we can see here what we're doing on Saturday. It's going to be, the sun's coming into Leo, right? And, I think people are really going to start wanting to shine bright, you know what I mean? Their brilliance is going to start really being realized, or people are going to get really confident about what they're doing in a way that is without the baseline here of the Cancerian energy. Maybe it's got some holes in it. Maybe our boat is not seaworthy. Perhaps, it was already dry to begin with, and then the sun just reaching its peak is just going to completely, there's a lot of droughts all over the place. So I feel like that is part of what's happening as well. regardless if you feel like it's where, what if it's a natural change to the climate, if we are creating it, if there are certain forces that are also creating it by way of certain types of technologies. I'm sure that's going to get the porn bots coming in here pretty swiftly, wouldn't you say? Okay, guys, I'm sorry. There we go. So tomorrow, Saturday, the sun comes into Leo, and Mercury and Jupiter are going to be in a trine with each other. So this is where Jupiter is going to station retrograde. You can see Chiron is already here. We're going to talk about Chiron in August. August's Catalyst Classroom sessions are going to be all about Chiron, where Chiron is in conjunction, which is 17 degrees Aries. This is a starseed marking for Tau Ceti, so we're going to talk all about that next month. But this Chiron retrograde is again, it's even more of a painful realization, right? There's no way to kind of bypass it when it's retrograde, because we're just experiencing it so much deeply within ourselves. There may be inversions to this, right? And people may find themselves acting out in a way that reinforces this because of a not really wanting to address this. This is that cold, hard truth thing that keeps coming up. And then Jupiter stations retrograde this week as well. Actually, right at the new moon, Jupiter stations retrograde. So as Jupiter is holding the space, right, of the full picture of who you are, right, in terms of the full understanding, right, the big picture, the pattern of who you are and what makes you you, being held right now by Jupiter in one big like umbrella, right? And you're looking at yourself in this crystal ball, so to speak, or concentrating on the full picture of who you are, and Jupiter is kind of holding it. It's like this balloon. Now it's going to start deflating, and we're going to want to be, not forget what this represents for us as Jupiter now contracts and goes back into Pisces before coming back out and coming through Aries in the fall and like towards the end of 2022 into 2023. So this is this trine here, and all of the things that are going to happen with Jupiter, right? Because there's going to be let's see here. The moon is going to come into Cancer. It's going to square Jupiter as well. And this is just a reminder, but Mercury in particular, in this trine, this fire trine to Jupiter, right? You got the mind and you got the higher mind, Mercury and Jupiter. And remember what I just talked about? Mercury comes from Jupiter, right? It is he is the result of Zeus and one of the Pleiadian stars, and Maya, I think, is the mother of Mercury. Maia, I believe, or Meia, one of the seven sisters. So, and we can't talk about 8 to 9 degrees of a fire sign without talking about Antares, but that'll be for another day. But especially with Mercury, if you're an Antarian starseed, you're gonna Mercury is going to get right at that. And don't forget who you are. And in fact, this is an opportunity really to use your own creative intensity to reinforce that that crystal ball in some ways, and that image, right? And to remember that you yourself, us, in our own consciousness, is able to use that intensity to be able to shape our, who we are. It's like blowing glass, right? It needs to be at very hot temperatures, and the glass becomes, a liquid in those really hot, in the furnace, right? But then you're able to use, you blow, right? Mercury's got that spiritual kind of, pneumatic quality of the air and able to shape into something. This trine is really important this weekend to remember that, because again, it's going to, with the contraction of Jupiter in its retrograde, it's going to be a little bit difficult coming through the next couple of months. Now, when it stations retro or direct in Pisces, I have a feeling that's going to be a really big expansion very quickly, but we'll see how it goes. In the meantime, Mercury is establishing, at least in this moment of this trine, like you, me, our consciousness is capable of shaping the person we are and how we express ourselves. And those two things are linked together. So this trine is also really important tomorrow. Let's see what else is happening. Let me look at the transits. So the moon will move in from Taurus into Gemini. It will sextile the sun almost immediately at 0 degrees. So the moon will be at 0 degrees Gemini, which is Alcyon, by the way. It will sextile 0 degrees of Leo for the sun, and this is the first probably favorable connection since there was the square to the sun at the very last degrees of Cancer and the moon at the very last degrees of Aries. So now we come to a sextile, and it's like, okay, this energy is like erupting within our own identity and self, and we want to express it with 0 degrees Leo. And the moon at this degree of Gemini is like, yes, we have access within ourselves to the whole picture, right? The entire web of consciousness, in terms of spirit, in terms of the entire ocean. And yes, there is a translucent kind of glass bottom to this, but we can still see everything. And this sextile, I think, is also very important, considering how powerful this third quarter moon really seemed to be. So this is where we can make something out of this, right? Where we can actually gaze upon the full range of possibility in ourselves, within ourselves, in our own subconscious, in our feelings, our inner landscape, and apply that to a sense of wanting to bring something forward, allowing something to kind of erupt in us, for that kundalini in a number of ways to awaken, our voice to awaken. And Alcyon was she's the brightest star in the Pleiades cluster. She's kind of like the main sister of the seven sisters, and the starseeds from the Pleiades, especially Alcyon. I mean, it just seems like you have full picture here of what are all the possibilities. So, and your own consciousness, your own ego, your mind in some ways allows for a connection to this without full submersion, because that full submersion is what Neptune in Pisces does. And a moon in Pisces surely will have us fully submerged into that experience. This moon at 0 degrees Gemini is not that at all. It is establishing where the boundary is within ourselves, that then we can truly express our individual self and not actually express the energies, the vital energies of some other corrupt system, right? Or just letting ourselves be taken over. And that's been the issue for, probably our whole lives, really, but especially in the last 2 years. So the moon comes into Gemini, and we are, after that sextile, it just gets so interesting. Mercury trines Jupiter. And then the moon is going to come into Gemini and sextile Jupiter at the same place, and sextile Mercury, right? They're going to be, the moon will be in conjunction with Aldebaran during this time. So let's look at that, actually. This is Saturday, tomorrow. It's jam-packed. I mean, that's the thing. There's just so much stuff, here we go, going on. And you can see that there's a sextile here. We talked about how these two are trine to each other. And so when you have a trine, it does, it's not exactly, there's not a lot of like challenge or growth or learning. It's more of a stabilizing force. And it's the sextiles where we're actually a participant in transmuting this energy. So the moon in conjunction with Aldebaran coming into a sextile to Jupiter, a sextile to Mercury. It's, we have to be, identify our mental prowess, right? We have to realize that we hold all of the arrows in our quiver. We have to, emotionally especially, that it's all there, and we just have to choose that which we are going to use to, kind of just penetrate through our own ego. And also, too, being willing to take that nosedive, right? To be able to challenge what has been established, and even gravity itself, and go for it. And this, again, seems like we have to take some sort of initiative and make a choice within ourselves, right? Because that's what Gemini seems to always be about, is choices, right? Because this or that, this or that, this or that. We always have choices. And Gemini just brings that out, which is why it can be so difficult to find, to really trust the Gemini archetype, and why there's a lot of trickster energy attached to it, because there's always an antithesis to anything, right? And so how can you possibly ever get to truth? Well, that's part of the Sagittarian alchemy that is not represented at all right now either. So but the moon in Gemini in this configuration, I think, is going to remind us about that Aldebaran, that connection as well. And Aldebaran is the largest star in the Taurus constellation. It's the left eye, the bullseye, so to speak. And I think there's a certain amount of making a choice within ourselves, like really committing to something within ourselves, that then will make something of this energy that's like, yeah, we can create ourselves in the any image that we want. We just have to know what it is, hold the pattern of it, and be able to, breathe life into it, essentially. But we have to actually make the commitment and in our mind, right? We actually have to hit the bullseye within our own inner landscape in order to make the best use of that, in terms of what I'm looking at here, at least. So that's Gemini, Moon sextile Mercury. Yeah, so that's Saturday, my friends. So Sunday, the 24th. There's not much going on. Astrologically, the moon is in Gemini, and it's going to have a sextile to our good friend Chiron, and that's, there's really not much going on. It seems like a lull in some ways that we're having on the 24th, and it's probably going to be very necessary to have like this type of downtime. I get the sense that the 24th is going to be some measure of downtime that's going to be really needed, regardless if we had a blast this coming weekend, if it was really challenging for us, whatever it is. It's like the 24th is going to be that time where we're like, okay, now I got to like integrate it somehow. Venus is going to be coming into a square with Jupiter by the time we get to Monday. So that peace of mind and that sense of, real emotional security and nourishment is going to be disrupted almost immediately. With this square here, but that's not coming until Monday. So in the meantime, the moon, like I said, sextile Chiron, and what else? I have it written down here. And yeah, that's really it in terms of major aspects. The moon sextile to Chiron, and the moon will be in conjunction to Rigel when that happens, right? The front foot of Orion. Rigel is a pretty substantial starseed marking, and so the moon there, and it's really about mental maturity. It's like about growing up and from a very youthful and robust kind of mental sphere to something way more mature, stepping forward in a way that shows that there's been a lot of discovery. Now it's meant to be kind of shared and put out in the world, and part of that experience is the mental maturity that comes about as a result of this process, stepping forward, right? Having the capacity and the initiative to do that. So sextile to Chiron, there is there's a point here where the internalized generation of vital energies within ourselves becomes more, again, this narcissism seems to be coming back around, becomes more of a narcissistic, almost isolationist, almost a refusal to participate. And Chiron in its retrograde is going to just make this so much more like, well, you can't keep refusing to participate because there's only so far you can take this energy. And the sextile to the moon is kind of like, hey, there's a time and place for this, but there's also a time and place to allow this to influence and activate your own consciousness. And we're going to feel that within us, I think, with this sextile to Chiron. And again, that's the main thing on Sunday, because then we come into Monday on the 25th, really coming into our balsamic moon. And like I said, the Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics, right? Everybody loves them. They usually bring good fortune and harmony and beauty and relationships, all the feel goods, right? And for them to be in a square with each other, cardinal square, Cancer and Aries, she is really pulling the sense of value and worth and harmony and our connection to the material world, our senses, right? Really pulling it back into to be a little bit, it's not about naive, but it kind of is, to not forget about the new moon, that we didn't know exactly where we were going, but we at least are trying to reach out and understand what it is that we're here, what life is and our place in it. And so, Jupiter in Aries is going to presume that it has it all figured out, because Jupiter, as the ruler of Sagittarius, is the leader, right? And is the representative, right? And so, and it's certainly going to present itself as the big picture and pattern, right? The details are where Jupiter gets lost, and that's, what Mercury's for. But Venus, very much in the feels, very, very much in the feels in Cancer, very much in the consolidated, feminine energy in terms of emotional security, but coming through our senses, right? And so I feel like people are starting to really get it now with Venus in Cancer of like, okay, this is what I need to actually do in order to consolidate my resources, take care of my family, be sensitive to the balance in these areas too. Whereas Jupiter's like, oh, I have it all, here's the big picture of who I am, and I'm just going to stay in this pattern here, and that's all I need. And Venus is like, that's not growth. And I think, again, Chiron in retrograde is making it harder and harder right now to stay insular in terms of even our own potency and desire. Oh, I can just create it within myself. That's not actually what manifestation means. It starts here, absolutely, but it has to be grown. And this is what Cancer is all about, the space in which it grows. And the growth is comes to fulfillment during Leo time in terms of the flower, right? And pollination and joy and lust and attraction, right? This is all Leo energy, right? The passion card in the tarot, or the strength card in the tarot. It is truly the feminine, the Lilith archetype that can hold this energy and create from it new life, right? Creative expression, a resonance. So we can't get away from the emotional boundaries that are created and that we're part of, whether we like it or not. This can always change. This can always go deeper, and this can always find a new core system. And I think that's the real lesson of Pluto in Capricorn right now, opposite Procyon, which is learning, especially the Procyon starseeds. They are really the ones that are either really acting out in isolationism or acting out in a way that's really overbearingly protective, and or the other side of it is to kind of just feel lost without a home, right? Because there's no way to go back into that system. So Pluto and Capricorn right now in its retrograde, and certainly as it comes back over this point of 26, 27, 28 degrees, Capricorn is going to, really have us deeply, investigate and to be sensitive to where our power comes from, truly, right? And it's not in the outer institutions, because that is up for demolition and always has been, especially the US. It's been baked into the cake. Now, I can't speak to the intentions of that specifically, because I wasn't there, but, Ben Franklin and a number of other architects of this country not only were involved in Freemasonry and occult practices in the mystery schools, and astrology is just one of those things, right? In terms of tracking the cosmic calendar. So it was baked into the cake, and feeling lost, it's really easy to be like, I don't need anyone. And Jupiter even is just like, I am the representative, so I don't really need, to the point where, even rebelled against the Titans. But I get a sense here that Venus is going to be like, no, we actually do need each other. We definitely need each other. And the new moon is all about this, right? That we need to put aside these social values that in the law, when it comes down to it, are really just relative. They're just fashion. They're not actually based on anything. And this is, the most obvious is like the political, bifurcation in the US, right? And I keep seeing these posts that are like, there's gonna be a civil war, and I'm just like, well, only if people are fighting each other. Like, if that's where it needs to go, that's certainly, Neptune was in Pisces during that time, and we know also too that the mid 19th century was a really potent time, just like now. And do we go and do that again? Do we get caught up in the battle of the Orion false feedback loop in order to gain power? Or do we do it differently this time? That's up to us, right? Not up to the people who are, managing the looking glass or remote viewing. Although I do feel like that there is some real benefit to that, actually, individual people. But there's so many ways that can be manipulated too. But I also feel like that we all are so naturally capable of it that we can actually get a sense of, the pattern based in time and what is likely to transpire as a result. But it's always because of us and our interaction with the world around us and our choices. And this new moon is going to be at a time. It's going to be a real opportunity for us to finally to realize this within ourselves, so that then we can realize it and act on it in our actual lives outside of us. Because so many of us have been, insulated, we've been insular, we've isolated, we have fought, we have battled, we have just gone around the ropes with people. And when you realize it's all, it's all, photons are in a wave and they're in a particle, right? I mean, it's all the same thing at the end of the day. We all have our own unique voice, but to make sure that we do remember that they are relative, that they are not fixed in truth. There's only one truth, right? And that is the truth of whoever, whatever, created this experience, and however you conceptualize that. And we all go back to it, which is Pisces, but we all come back into the next stage of our soul evolution. And here on Earth, that's certainly represented right now by Aries and the vernal equinox and the seed point of creation. So let me see what else is going on here, because it's just so much. That's Monday the 25th, Tuesday the 22nd. There's that Mercury square Mars that we talked about. We're facing the storm. Wednesday the 27th, Mercury is in a trine to Chiron. I think this is very interesting, actually, because this is where we can establish for ourselves, a sense of togetherness, what it feels like, how do we get there? How do we get out of needing to just generate this potency within ourselves and actually come together, and each of us participating and adding our own unique signature to this larger process. And so look at this chart. This is the 27th. Now we're truly at our balsamic moon at this point, right? The last 45 degrees before the new moon cycle. So you see that Venus and Lilith are now together. Boy, that's going to bring Lilith right into our embodied. That's going to be intense in Cancer too. Wow. Yeah, people, there's going to be a fierce protection, a very, some people are going to act out of disempowerment here when it comes to resources and value and worth, and material things. Some people, and the balance of it, the harmony with living with the natural and sense-based world. It also, so people can overcompensate by getting really protective at this point. And where will that be? Yeah. And also too, to like establish oneself in their character so strongly that that they can be clowned in some ways. That's something that's going to come out really strong. It may come out in a way that you don't even think it's going to come out in you. So be aware of that. But look at what else is happening, right? You have the moon in a connection to her own nodal axis, and you also, like I said, you have this. You're coming into Mercury, coming into that square with Mars, and also I think this is Mercury still in its, Mercury in its trine to Chiron. I thought it was Jupiter for some reason. Mercury is in its trine to Chiron. And like I said, this is, when we at least get a sense of what it's like to generate that energy within ourselves, if we don't necessarily have anything outside of us that is up to, our standards of what we want to interact with, or if we feel like that there isn't anything to engage with, there's something to be said here, right? But it can't stay here. And Mercury in a trine to Chiron, actually, I feel like is going to be like, no, it doesn't have to stay here, but you have to be able to start from that inner generation of frequency, right? That spark of life, in order to participate in the coming together of all of our voices. And there's something very powerful about this coming this week. And then we come into our new moon on the 28th. So what I like about these particular types of transits is that when you have like an opposition, like the nodes, for instance, and then you have a body that's in trine to one. So you have this water trine to the south node from the moon in Cancer, and then you have a sextile. It always feels to me like this is the anchor point of the power, and then this is where it's released into a transmutational moment in the sextile. So the south node is the momentum at a soul level forward. It's almost like our emotional selves, especially with the moon in Cancer, a dark moon in Cancer, tapping into this very deep soul mastery of being able to plunge ahead into the unknown, right? And be able to like kind of draw the curtains away and see the pathway ahead of you. And anchoring into this in our fields, our sensitivity, our subconscious, our dreamscape, it's like that energy can then be redirected and amplified and then transmute when it meets the north node, which is our soul's destiny. And that has so much more, especially at this juncture, 19 to 20 degrees Taurus. This is the wisps of wing-like clouds through the sky, right? That we are just in tune to the way spirit talks to us through nature in and of itself, right? That we're not necessarily going into the unknown and establishing a sense of power in our relationship to life. It's just being present with it. And I think that this is, part of this is, being able to establish where we really feel held and happy, and a sense of real happiness, right? Like actually being able to commune with the community and be part of it and feel a sense of, being held in a lot of ways, and to allow the voice to kind of like rise up. So this comes from a deep place, a soul history in a lot of ways of what we've already plunged into and allowing us to move forward right now, which is really about this, well, I guess it's really, like I said, it's really about just being present with, the voice of the universe and Great Spirit, and being able to see it, right? Being able to identify it, being able to receive the blessing of it as well. And there's something about emotionally just knowing that this is where you belong and where you feel the most happy, that is going to, I think, really activate this experience. So we come to, like I said, our new moon on the 28th. And what else is happening this day is just phenomenal, because not only is it a new moon in Leo, we also have Mercury in a T-square to the nodes, right? And so this is, there's always that tension with the nodal axis, and it's getting pretty close to being a grand square, if I'm going to be completely honest. It's not like as bold as it could be, because Saturn is still a number of degrees away, but still it's there, this grand square. So what this represents means we're not getting out of whatever this moment here is, but we have to, and it's there. It's there to keep us in our lane and almost force us into the eye of the needle, right? It's only through the acceptance of our common humanity that we find our own individual voice, and in a way that doesn't suppress anyone else. We're not forced into a totalitarian, fake utopia, right? It is individuals being their full individual selves, expressing themselves, which creates the reality that we all live in. And so this T-square, which really turns into a grand square, is going to be kind of like nobody gets out of this moment here of Leo and Aquarius. It's all fixed energy too. Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, ouch, all in, we're getting into, the last decan of all of these signs too, the last 10 degrees. So boy, oh boy, identifying ourselves and our voice and our sense of our consciousness with that which is the life bringer, which is the sun, being able to identify with that. Yeah, it's causing problems with Saturn. That is like, yeah, but your responsibility is not to your own voice necessarily, or the expression of it, but to the collective and what that is offering to the collective consciousness. But we still have the matter of our own soul's evolution, which is along it's a feminine line of power specifically, and towards the fertility of the goddess herself, in terms of Venus rules Taurus, right? This is about the earth. This is about the natural resonance. This is about the soil itself, right? The medium of our growth, the resources, energetic resources, financial resources, our actual currency itself. Taurus in the second house, very much about those nuts and bolts that make up the world. Not so much what make up our institutions, that is a Capricorn thing, but Taurus is. Oh boy, whatever this is, whatever this transpires into, it is in fact the thing that none of us will get around, and is, like I said, will force us into that singular point of the eye of the needle, where we have to leave all of our baggage behind, literally, so that we can pass through it together. And I feel like that, what a beautiful moment. What a beautiful moment to have, like, one of these huge challenges, a fixed grand square. Oh my gosh. So there will be so much more content coming around these things. The new moon report for Leo rising, Leo sun, Leo moon, that's going to be uploaded next week. Leading up to this point, the 31st is going to be our Lionsgate presentation, and I will be getting up to speed with promotional material here very, very soon. So I'm going to check in with the stream here, make sure that everything is going well, the chat's going well. Seems like people are just kind of in that listening mode, which is really good, right? So But I'm going to end it there for today, my friends. I think that there is plenty going on right now. So hopefully this astrology gives you a sense of what to, expect, or what areas of your chart are being impacted by some of these major transits. Remember, we are getting bombarded. It is like we're going through contractions in some way right now. It's uncomfortable. It is it's unnerving sometimes. People are scared. There's a lot of disappointment right now as well, some cold hard truths, but it's all about, it seems to me at least, really establishing a firm piece of rebar in the ground when it comes to the collective voice and what our participation has led to. And so I think that Jupiter in its retrograde, to be perfectly honest, I know it's not going to be easy, but it's exactly the type of kind of like internalized expansion or a review period of who we are and who we believe ourselves to be, and the full pattern of who we are. I think that it's going to be very important to deeply go into that space over the next couple of weeks and beyond. And it starts with the new moon, right? Jupiter will station retrograde, as you can see here, right at that new moon. So don't forget who you are, and realize we're coming back to this point later, and to, very bravely be able to face the storm. And that's what Mars in Taurus right now is really helping right now. If we can really see the value in patiently waiting for the right moment, or to be in alignment with the natural flow of things in order to signal the time to release our power or to move forward, we're in good shape, right? And a lot of it is, again, there's adversity that Mars is going to like bust through for us or with us, as long as we, haven't gotten agitated enough to, bust through the gate early. So that's something to consider too. And there can be all kinds of ways to manipulate us into doing those types of things. And, of course, the information aspect is the primary, but frequency in general is a way to influence people and their own decisions. And Mars just acts. It doesn't think. Mars doesn't represent any kind of like forethought or consideration of others. It is just the spark of life, and there's no thinking there. There's just being. So keep that in mind too, is to put that output when it's the right time and things are the most the ground is the most fertile for what we want to cultivate. So, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very, very much. I think I got my outro back on lockdown. There were some technical difficulties, of course, with that stuff. So, just, make sure if you really value this material that you are liking, you're subscribing, you're sharing, you're commenting, no matter what platform you're on. It really does make a difference. It reaches a larger audience. There are other people that would really gain some value out of our community, right, that is building, and everybody's perspectives, and certainly the astrology as well. So I really encourage you to take a moment to, subscribe if you haven't, hit the like button. It really does help. I'll see you guys on Monday for the Starseed Ministry. Have a great weekend. Enjoy one of the primary lessons as we're going through the eye of this needle here. So I'll see you guys on Monday. Take care of yourselves. I love you. Bye.